Outstanding, old player.
Howdy folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you folks, I have a bit of a tabletop role-playing game video, because for today folks, I'm going to be taking time and doing a bit of a retro review of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. Now understand, when it comes to this review, I am reviewing the revised edition. I'm not reviewing the original printing of the book. I'm not reviewing the more modern Kickstarter edition of the book. I'm looking back at what was printed. I believe mine was actually printed in 1988. Either ways, let's dive on into it. And I think the first place to really start with is to have a good understanding of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness. Because understand that when this book was released, it was actually only based on the comic books at the time, with the comic books actually starting by Eastman and Laird in 1984, and the first printing of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness was in 1985 by Palladium. So this actually even predates the cartoon that would come out in 1987, as well as the live action movie that came out in 1990, which is actually set to have its 35th anniversary this year, I think it was. So pretty interesting on that one. Now, the one cool thing about this book is Palladium actually did get Eastman and Laird to work on the tabletop role-playing game. Well, I'm not so much sure about Laird, but Eastman did a lot of the art for the book. Actually, I think he did all the art for the book, which is a little unusual for Palladium. Usually they have in-house people that does actually the artwork for the various tabletop role-playing games. In the case of this one, it was actually done by Eastman. Also, with that being said, this is probably the earliest licensed product by Eastman and Laird when it comes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, the game itself is going to require a full set of Dungeons & Dragons dice, and the dice you're most commonly going to use for this is actually the percentiles, although you will use the D20 for combat, and you'll also use the D6 quite a bit when it comes to doing damage rolls. But all the dice are required for the game, and you're going to need multiples. Now, the book itself, the character creation itself is extremely time-consuming, especially if you're newer to a Palladium role-playing game system and you're not really familiar with the character creation of a Palladium role-playing game system. Even still, even if you are familiar, it's still going to be a very time-consuming process. And I figure the place I better begin with is the attributes, because essentially that's where the book begins with. There's a total of 8 attributes. This will be your physical endurance, your physical strength, so on. To roll these attributes, you're going to roll 3d6 and add it together. However, if you get a 16 or higher on your 3d6, that is considered an exceptional stat, and you get to roll a bonus d6 to enhance the stat even further. Then it gets into rolling your animal type, and there's various different animal types. Most of them, though, are going to be North American-based animals. However, there are some more exotic zoo animals within the different types. Essentially, you're going to roll your animal category, and then you're going to roll what type of animal in that category you will be playing as. You can also pick, but it is pretty interesting from time to time to roll randomly just to see what kind of mutant animal type you're going to get. And then you're going to roll the cause of your mutation. May it be some type of experiment, may it be a complete accident because of some toxic sludge. like in the case of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themselves. And there's a couple different ones to roll out, which is going to give different factors on the character itself, but it's not going to make or break the character at the end of the day. Now, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to essentially calculate your bio-E or bioenergy, and that's what you're going to use to make your character. Essentially, it goes by size scale. There's certain points based on what kind of animal you get, and then those points are used to either make your character bigger. You can use them to add natural armor to the character, such as if you are playing a rhinoceros. You can also add natural weapons, such as if you're a rat, you can have teeth and claws as a natural weapon, as well as tail. It could also adjust how your hands are, how the character looks, how they stand, how they walk, etc. So it's actually all pretty cool on that end, and for the time it was extremely unique, to be honest. The next part of the book is choosing... And then essentially that's, once you're done with the bio-E section of the book, that's essentially where you're going to get your character, such as this one here is actually, if I remember correctly, a Wolverine, a mutant Wolverine, which was also drawn by Eastman, which is going to be kind of important. I'm going to get back to this in a little bit when it comes to the art of the book itself. But then you move on to choosing your skills, and your skills is going to be based on your background or your cause of the mutation, and essentially that's randomly rolled, and essentially you're going to have primary skills and secondary skills, and they're broken down into various skill groups. Some skills are more physical, some skills are more educational, some skills are essentially pretty much require a college education or a college degree, if you will. My other skills, you can pretty much just learn on your own from reading the book. So it's going to vary when it comes to your skills. The next thing I want to highlight here too is the martial arts. So for those that are familiar with Robotech but not Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Robotech had essentially basic, expert, and martial arts. For Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, you actually have basic, expert, martial arts, assassin, and ninjutsu. So you actually have additional martial arts within Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, and they all have a little bit of variation from one another. And of course, it's pretty much just to give you different types of fighting styles to work with, and each one has its own set abilities based on your character level. Essentially, this is where your hand-to-hand combat damage is going to come from, where your block, parry, dodge abilities is going to come from, which is important for combat, where your attack bonus is going to come from, so on and so forth. Now, when it comes to weapons, they actually have a pretty good mix of weapons in the core rulebook itself, although there's several expansions that expands the types of weapons. To begin with, there's a lot of ancient style weapons, which would be considered like your katanas, various different types of swords, battle axes, so on, as well as it also has a good mix of modern weapons, such as handguns, submachine guns, assault rifles, shotguns, so on. Now, when it comes to the combat of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, I will admit at first it is a little confusing to deal with, but essentially as you play the game and experience the combat system more and more, it's actually a fairly decent combat system. There's combat systems out there that are much more complex, but there's also ones out there that are a lot more simple. This one does kind of run in the realm of Dungeons and Dragons crunchiness for the combat system. However, with that being said, for the players familiar with Robotech, it's actually a much easier to manage combat system than Robotech is. So credit where credit's due. I actually think the combat system, although it takes a lot of elements from Robotech, is actually better in a lot of regards. Now, when it comes to body armor in the game, there's actually modern body armor, such as flak vest, and there is also natural armor, such as a turtle shell. Essentially, your natural armor is purchased with BioE, and then natural armor you can purchase with cash. And you can actually stack the armor. Although, to be honest, I don't remember what the effects of stacking the armor is off the top of my head. Sorry, folks. It's been a while since I've actually played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other Strangeness. But what it comes down to is his armor actually has its own armor class and its own SDC, basically structural damage. Characters also have SDC as well. Now, what I want to put out here, this is going to kind of combine a little bit with the combat system, which is why I want to talk about this now, is to hit somebody, it's actually only, all you need to do is roll a 5 or better. Doesn't take much to actually hit someone. Of course, if you roll a 1, it's an automatic miss when it comes to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other Strangeness. Now, if the character's wearing body armor and you roll below the armor class of the body armor, then any damage is dealt to the body armor. If you roll above the armor class of the armor, no matter if it's body armor or natural armor, then it's done directly to the character and they take SDC damage. Once they are out of SDC points, well, essentially they take hit point damage. Now, when it comes to body armor, when that runs out of SDC damage, essentially the body armor is destroyed and it's now useless. So it's actually not all bad. It might sound a little complicated the way I explained it, but realistically, it's very simple. Now, the one thing I want to talk about is both the black and white and color art, because, well, they just did a great job on the art, or at least Eastman did an awesome job on the art. He actually did all the art for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and other Strangeness, including all the mutant animals within the book itself, and it's all really well done. Also, one thing that I think is cool when it comes on the discussion of art is actually the book itself actually has a short comic in it done by Eastman and Laird. So it's actually pretty cool. I've never seen this before in a TTRPG book, and I think this was really well done, especially because at the time, the only thing out there that was related to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the comic books. Now, the role-playing book itself has a lot of stats for the various different characters, including the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themselves, Splinter, and Shredder, as well as supporting characters such as Casey Jones and Baxter Stockman, who this is actually one of my earliest experiences of who Baxter Stockman was. With that being said, though, I don't know why they're featured in the book, but there is no entry whatsoever for Foot Clan ninjas. Kind of seems like a misstep there on the handling by Palladium Books. Why the Foot Clan ninjas wasn't added is beyond me. They would actually be added later in the book Turtles Goes to Hollywood. So it's really weird that that Foot Clan ninjas were not in the book at all, especially because even at the time, in the comic books, the Foot Clan ninjas was basically an important adversary to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The book itself also contains 4 adventures that the players can use. And overall, in my opinion, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness is actually a really solid TTRPG, as well as it kind of leads into another TTRPG titled After the Bomb that was made by Palladium Books as well. And essentially that was kind of like the earliest version of Mutant Year Zero, before Mutant Year Zero was a thing. The other nice thing is about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness book is it also lends itself to the other Palladium books out there. Understand that Palladium is essentially a megaverse system, and they were kind of one of the early steps towards a generic role-playing game system that could be used for various different role-playing games. Kind of GURPS before GURPS was a thing. So realistically, what I have to say about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness, if you can get it, it's really worth it. And honestly, for me, this game is a solid cowabunga, dude. Either ways, folks, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourselves a wonderful day.